Good morning. It's a privilege to join you guys here on the steps of the bell tower. Got a very revolutionary feel here, and I love it. At times like this, I think it's always appropriate to quote Thomas Jefferson. And what I'd like to do is read you a little bit of what he said with intended purpose and powers of the federal government from his Kentucky resolutions of 1798. What he said was that the several states composing the United States of America are not united on the principle of unlimited submission to their general government, but that they constitute a general government for special purposes, delegated to that government certain definite powers, reserving each state to itself the residuary mass of right to their own self-government, and that whensoever the general government assumes undelegated powers, its acts are unauthoritative, void, and of no force. Furthermore, the government created by this compact was not made the exclusive or final judge of the powers delegated to itself, since that would have made its discretion and not the Constitution the measure of its powers. But, as in all other cases of compact among powers having no common judge, each party has an equal right to judge for itself, as well of infractions as of the mode and measure of redress. In other words, we the people, through the actions of our sovereign state governments, have as much power to determine the constitutionality of federal laws as the Supreme Court now claims exclusively for itself. When you go to visit your state legislators today, if you haven't gone already, make sure you tell them it is time to restore Virginia's sovereignty. One of the first steps is with the Virginia Healthcare and Firearms Freedom Acts. Make sure they are on board with those measures. Tell them it's also time to reject unfunded mandates from the federal government that leave us beholden and subservient to their recklessness. Tell them it's simple. Freedom comes from independence, independence comes from self-reliance, and self-reliance starts at home. So stop carrying water for Washington, and let's focus on getting our house back in order. Thank you, Virginia Campaign for Liberty, Don Holt, for this great event. Freedom Works is really proud to be part of this coalition. Thank you all for coming out.
We now have Ben Markey, Virginia State Director of Americans for Prosperity.
Good morning. It's a fine Virginia morning, and I'll tell you what, it wouldn't be a fine Virginia morning if we didn't have new leadership here in Richmond. But the truth is, we wouldn't have gotten to this point if it weren't for all of you out here, and more importantly, leaders more than a decade ago, people like Pat McSweeney down here in front. That's when I jumped on the wagon. How many teenagers do we have here today? We got a few, that's good. That's good, that means you're skipping school to be here just like I did back then. That's how you're going to make a difference. And you're going to be leaders tomorrow as well. But today, and I'm not going to bore you with issues, you all have done such a great job over the course of the last year making your voices heard on those issues. How many folks here came to the Hands Off My Healthcare rallies? You know what to do. When you leave here today and you go into that building across Capitol Square and you go up to the 6th floor in the office of the Speaker and convince him that we need to stay the conservative road, they'll understand. And if they don't, they're not paying attention. But you guys are the ones who made the difference. I just want to thank you on behalf of Americans for Prosperity and all the people from across Virginia, from Cumberland Gap to Winchester, who came out to the bus stops. Thank you very much. And keep fighting. We will win. God bless you all.
He made a very important point. Bill Howell is the one man who will decide whether these two bills are voted on the House floor. Hold him accountable. John Taylor, President of Tertian Quids.
God, it's good to be up here. I've been standing in the mud right over there and my finger cold. To be successful in any type of endeavor, you have to understand what the fight is about, who the sides are. It's too easy today to say the fight is between Democrats and Republicans, or even conservatives and liberals. The fight today is whether we are going to be governed by the philosophy of our founding fathers or the philosophy of the progressive movement. These two philosophies cannot be reconciled because their basic tenets are mutually exclusive. A little more than 200 years ago, our founding fathers came on the scene and altered world history by setting a new order for the ages. No longer was the political hierarchy the king, the court, and as an afterthought, the people. Now the role of the sovereign would be performed by the people themselves. People had rights. Those rights did not come from government, so those rights could not be taken away by government. The limited power the government had was by the consent of the governed, and the purpose of government was limited to protecting rights. Unfortunately, in the early part of the last century, the progressive movement started to take hold of this country with one mission, and that mission was to repudiate the philosophy of the founding fathers.
That's right.
Under the progressive movement, no longer did you have rights because you were a human being, but you have whatever rights the government tells you you have. Under the progressive movement, I'm having a little trouble to win here. No longer do we enjoy free markets, but as Newsweek magazine recently said, we are now all socialists. Movement,
maybe they are.
We have private property because that has to be replaced by the redistributive state. Under the progressive movement, the objective standard of the rule of law, in which every man who came before the bar of justice was equal, had to be replaced with social justice, where every man is treated differently depending on how politically well connected he is. Under the progressive movement, the constitutionally limited government of the founders was to be much too confining for those in power. They had to be swept aside by a living constitution that can say on any given day what those in power say it says. Under the progressive movement, you have to be kidding with the idea that sovereignty rests in the people. Sovereignty is vested in the government, and not just any government, but the federal government. And what is the purpose of government? Under the progressive movement, the purpose of government is not limited to protecting rights, because your rights are nothing more than an obstacle to the utopian visions of those in power in the first place. So there you have it. You must decide. Are you the intellectual heirs of the founders of this country? Now let me ask you a couple of questions. Does Nancy Pelosi decide what your rights are? No! Does Harry Reid decide that Does your time, labor, income, and property belong to Barney Frank and redistribute? No! Do you want to give Chucky Schumer the blank check called social justice? No! Do you want the current crowded Washington to decide willy-nilly what the living Constitution might mean today? No! Do you want to give up your sovereignty to Charlie Rangel? No! Do you want to entrust your country and the future of your children and grandchildren to our community activists in chief? No! Virginians have always been called on to lead, and we have always risen to that challenge. It's time for us to do that once again. Let's go home today with the attitude that we're going to take our Constitution back and we're going to take our country back. Thank you. The inimitable Jay Radke, Richmond Tea Party.